Welcome to the Palestinian Corner from Montreal, and this is our 54th episode devoted to the Israel-Palestine conflict. The Israel-Palestine conflict is the ongoing struggle between Israel and the Palestinians that began in the mid-20th century, usually referred to as the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. But Israel has 1/3 of its population as Palestinian Arabs, who identify themselves with the Palestinians, Palestinian Jews also who oppose Zionism, and a large number of Arab Jews who are not part of the Zionist design, in addition to a large number of Israeli liberals who also demonstrate against Israeli Zionist state policies. Moreover, it is not proper in an era of respecting all religions and people from other regions and countries to include them in a philosophy of prejudice, occupation, and violation of human rights of native people of any land. The conflict is wide-ranging, and the term is sometimes also used in references to the earlier sectarian conflict in mandatory Palestine between the Zionist Jewish immigrants and the Palestinian Arab population of historic Palestine under the British rule. It has been referred to as the world's most ongoing national issue, not resolved yet, where Israeli occupations of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, in fact, all of Palestine, reaching 50 years, more than 50 years, almost 100 years, despite a long-term peace process and the general reconciliation of Israel with Egypt and Jordan. Israel Palestinians have failed to reach a final peace agreement. The key issues are full recognition of the Palestinian state, borders, security, water rights, control of Jerusalem, Wailing Wall, Israeli settlements, Palestinian freedom of movements, and Palestinian rights of return. The violence of the conflict in a region rich in sites of historic, cultural, and religious interest worldwide has been the object of numerous international conferences dealing with historic rights, security issues, and human rights, and has been a factor hampering tourism and general access to these areas that are contested. Many attempts have been made to broker a two-state solution involving the creation of an independent Palestinian state alongside the state of Israel. In 2007, the majority of both Israelis and Palestinians, according to a number of polls, preferred the two-state solutions over any other solutions to resolve the conflict. The majority of Israelis and Jews see the Palestinian demand for an independent, free Palestine is just. The majority of Israelis and Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza Strip have expressed a preference for a two-state solutions, a mutual distrust, and significant disagreements among Israeli as well as Palestinian political leadership are deep over basic issues, as is the reciprocal skepticism about the other side's commitment to obligations and peace. Within Israeli and Palestinian societies, the conflict generates a wide variety of views and opinions. This highlights the deep division which exists between the Israelis and the Palestinians. A hallmark of the conflict has been the level of violence witnessed throughout the years since the military presence of the Zionist movement in Palestine. Fighting has been conducted by regular armies, paramilitary groups, terror cells, and individuals. Casualties have not been restricted to the military, with a large number of fatalities in civilian population on both sides. There are prominent international actors involved in the conflict. However, the two parties who are still supposedly in political negotiations are the Israeli government, currently led by Benjamin Netanyahu, and the Palestine Authority, currently headed by Mahmoud Abbas. The official negotiations are mediated by an international contingent known as the Quartet on the Middle East, represented by a special envoy that consists of the United States, Russia, the European Union, and the United Nations. The Arab League is another important actor which has opposed an alternative peace plan. Egypt, a founding member of the Arab League, has historically been a key participant. Did I say negotiations? If they continue, but they make commotions in the beginning, then a hubbub, and then an agitated disturbance to halt all the negotiation. And only God knows when it will resume again. Since 2006, the Palestinian side has been fractured by conflict between the two major factions, Fatah, the traditionally dominant party, and its later electoral challenger Hamas. Soon after its holy victory in the election of 2006, the quartet conditions future foreign assistance to the Palestine Authority, the PA, on the future government's commitment to non-violence, recognition of Israel, and acceptance of previous agreements. Hamas said no, rejected these demands, which resulted in the quartet's suspension of its foreign assistance program. This is Hamas waiting for a holy order, and the imposition of the economic sanctions by the Israelis. A year later, following Hamas' seizure of power in the Gaza Strip 2007, the PA was split between Fatah in the West Bank and Hamas in the Gaza Strip. The divisions of government between the parties had effectively resulted in the collapse of bipartisan government of the PA. However, in 2014, a Palestinian unity government composed of both Fatah and Hamas was formed. The latest round of peace negotiations began in July 2013 and was suspended in 2014. The Israeli-Palestine conflict has its roots in the late 19th and early 20th century, with the birth of the major nationalist movements in Europe and among European Zionists and among the Palestinians as well, both geared toward attaining sovereignty for their people in historic Palestine. The collusion between those two forces in the 1920s eventually escalated into the Israeli-Palestine conflict in 1947 and expanded into the wider Arab-Israeli conflict later on. The emerging leadership of Hajj Amin al-Husseini in mandatory Palestine marked the beginning of Palestinian Arab nationalist struggle toward establishment of a national home for the Palestinians. Amin al-Husseini, the architect of the Palestinian national movement, immediately marked Jewish national movements and European Zionist immigrations to Palestine as the enemies to his cause, initiating large-scale riot against the European Jews as early as 1920 in Jerusalem and in 1921 in Jaffa. Among the results of the violence was the establishment of the Zionist paramilitary force Haganah in 1929, a series of violence. The riots resulted in massive Zionist casualties in Hebron and Safed, and the evacuation of Jews from Hebron. The Arab Revolt of 1936 to 39 in Palestine, motivated by opposition to mass European Jewish and Zionist immigration and the presence of British forces supporting Zionist goals. In the early 30s, the Arab national struggle in Palestine had drawn many Arab nationalist militants from across the Arab countries, from Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Saudi Arabia. Most notably Sheikh Izzuddin al-Qassam from Syria, who studied 1 year at the Azhar Islamic University in Cairo and was introduced to the ranks of the Muslim Brotherhood. And when he realized he was followed by the Egyptian intelligence, he returned to Syria, where he was engaged again in illegal activities and sentenced to death in Syria, escaping again to Haifa, Palestine, and introduced himself as a sheikh and became well known among the poor class with his rhetoric speeches. He established the Black Hand militant group to assassinate pro-British personalities and civilians among the Palestinians who sell their lands to European Jews. Moreover, he claimed that Hajj Amin al-Husseini was a traitor and lackey of the British. He argued that Palestine will be liberated only by martyrdom. Following the death of al-Qassam at the hands of the British forces in late 1935, The tension erupted in 1936 into the Arab general strike and general boycott. The strike soon deteriorated into violence and repression. 1936 and 1939 Arab revolt in Palestine against the British and the European Zionist Jews in the first wave of organized violence lasting until early 1937. Much of the Arab factions were defeated by the British and a forced expulsion of much of the Arab leadership was performed. The revolt led to the establishment of the Peel Commission towards partitioning of Palestine, though was subsequently rejected by the Palestinians. The two main Zionist leaders, Chaim Weizmann and David Ben-Gurion, accepted the partition plan, but some secondary Zionist leaders opposed it. The renewed violence, which had supposedly lasted until the beginning of World War II, ended with around 5,000 casualties, mostly from the Arab side. With the eruption of World War II, the situation in mandatory Palestine calmed down, allowed a shift toward a more moderate stance among Palestinian Arabs. Under the leadership of the Nashashibi clan and even the establishment of the Jewish Arab Palestine Regiment under British command, fighting Germans in North Africa, the more radical exiled faction of al-Husseini, however, tended to be anti-British, calling for free Palestine from British occupation and uncontrolled Zionist immigrations to Palestine, and also the liberation of many Arab countries from the hegemony of British military rule. Haj Amin operated a radio program directed to his Palestinian people from Berlin, Germany, the only city and country to give him political asylum as a fugitive from British mandate who were seeking his arrest for a jail term. By the end of the World War II, Germany was defeated and Britain and USA went to a crisis over the fate of the Holocaust survivors. From Europe, which led to the renewed tension between the British Mandate authorities, Western Zionist immigrants and their semi-militant movements, and the Palestinian Arab leadership of mainly militant Qassam factions who called for martyrdom for the sake of Palestine. Immigration quotas were established by the British, while on the other hand, illegal immigration and Zionist insurgency against the British was increasing. On 29 November 1947, the General Assembly of the United Nations adopted Resolution 181, recommending the adoption of the implementation of a plan to partition Palestine into an Arab state, a Jewish state, and the city of Jerusalem to be under international supervision. On the next day, Palestine was already swept by violence, with Palestinians and Zionist militants executing attacks on each other. For 4 months, the war waged among the two factions. The Arab League supported the Arab struggle by forming the volunteer-based Arab Liberation Army, supporting the Palestinian Arab Army for the Holy War under the leadership of Abdel Qadir al-Husseini and Hassan Salama. On the Zionist side, the civil war was managed by the major underground militia, the Haganah, Irgun, and Stern, strengthened by numerous Zionist veterans of World War II and foreign volunteers. By the spring of 1948, it was already clear that the Arab forces were nearing a total collapse, while Zionist forces gained more and more territory, creating a large-scale refugee problems of Palestinian Arabs. Popular support for the Palestinian Arab throughout the Arab world led to sporadic violence against Jewish communities of Arab countries, creating an opposite refugee wave. The time between 1948 and 1967, 750,000 Palestinians were jammed into refugee camps in Gaza Strip, the West Bank, and East Bank of Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria. The Jordanian government annexed West Bank, and Egyptian-controlled Gaza Strip, and the borders were outlined by the 1949 Armistice Agreement. This, however, did not stop the Palestinians from calling for an Arab or a Palestinian action to liberate their homeland.